In tonight's news edition, royal decrees order dissolution of the lower house and holding parliamentary elections. His Majesty the King returns home after addressing the UN General Assembly and an Arab South American summit. And the Prime Minister holds talks with Palestinian leaders during a visit to the West Bank. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. A royal decree has dissolved the lower house of parliament with immediate effect. Another decree also ordered parliamentary elections to be held in accordance with the provisions of the law. His Majesty the King is back home after addressing the 67th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York and the third summit of South American and Arab countries, ASPA, in Peru. In his UN address, King Abdullah reiterated that the Palestinian issue remains the crux of the conflict in the Middle East, urging the international community to step up efforts to bring about an independent Palestinian state. He warned of any attempt to erase the Arab and Muslim identity of Jerusalem and its holy sites. Syria was a focal issue, with the king calling for a political solution to end bloodshed and violence. The king condemned all attempts to vilify the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, urging adherents of various religions to engage in a robust interfaith dialogue. Also on the sidelines of the General Assembly, the king held a series of meetings with world leaders and U.S. political and economic figures focusing on the Middle East and Jordan's reform drive. In his speech to the ASPA summit in Peru, the king called for an effective partnership between South and Latin American nations and the Arab world. He also tackled major regional developments, namely Syria and Middle East peace efforts, during talks with leaders of Peru, Lebanon, Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. Prime Minister Faiz al-Tarauni assured Palestinian leaders of Jordan's support of the Palestinian Authority during a brief visit to the West Bank city of Ramallah. He said Jordan will provide all forms of help to the Palestinian people to enable them to set up an independent state on their national soil. Tarauni said during a meeting with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas that resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict on the basis of the two-state solution and within a regional context is a key pillar of regional peace and security. The Prime Minister added during the talks attended by his Palestinian counterpart, Salam Fayyad, that Jordan will also continue its custodianship of holy sites in occupied Jerusalem and counter Israeli attempts to undermine the city's Arab identity. Abbas thanked Jordan for its support, noting His Majesty King Abdullah's role to put the Palestinian issue on the spotlight at international forums. Tarauni and Fayyad co-chaired a meeting of the Joint Jordanian-Palestinian Higher Committee to discuss various aspects of ties. The two sides signed 13 agreements to bolster cooperation in various fields. The Youth National Loyalty Alliance has put on hold a big march planned for tomorrow in Amman to counter a rally by Islamists. The youth group said in a statement it backed down to put the national interest ahead and not to let the march become the spark for those with a foreign agenda who have been waiting to drag the country into dire consequences. It said the Islamist march comes as the country's leadership forges ahead with reform, including constitutional amendments and parliamentary elections before year's end. It said the Muslim Brotherhood had at time provoked the state, which met them with patience, and are now trying to provoke citizens. In the meantime, the Public Security Department pledged it will carry out its responsibility to protect citizens and property and maintain public order and national stability. Public Security Director General Hussein Majali said security forces will secure protection of all peaceful rallies and expressions of opinion as an embedded constitutional right. Syria apologized through the United Nations for a mortar strike which killed 5 civilians in southeast Turkey. Damascus said such an incident would not be repeated. NATO demanded an immediate halt to aggressive acts against alliance member Turkey. Egypt and the Arab League criticized Damascus, saying the incident could endanger the whole region. Hala Dababne has more on the latest escalation and international reactions.
A mortar fire from Syria that killed 5 civilians in a Turkish town draws swift retaliation. Turkish artillery hit targets near Syria's Tel Abyad border town for a second day after the mortar hit a residential neighborhood in the southern town of Akakil. The violence is the most serious cross-border escalation of the 18-month-old uprising in Syria.
The Turkish response is understandable. An outrageous act has taken place. Turkish citizens have been killed inside Turkey by forces from another country. So we express our strong solidarity with Turkey, but we don't want to see a continuing escalation of this incident.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said she was outraged by the attack on Turkish territory.
It's a very, very dangerous situation, and all responsible nations need to band together to persuade the Assad regime to have a ceasefire, quit assaulting their own people, and begin the process of a political transition.
On a visit to Islamabad, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said it is important for Syria to acknowledge that the bombing on the Turkish border was accidental.
Through our ambassador to Syria, we have spoken to the Syrian authorities who assured us Al-Akhdar al-Ibrahimi was also involved. What happened at the border with Turkey was a tragic accident, and it will not happen again. We think it is of fundamental importance for Damascus to state that officially.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Berlin was concerned over the attack and expressed solidarity with Turkey.
Firstly, we strongly condemn the Syrian attacks on Turkey. This was the subject of the talks in the NATO Council yesterday. At the same time, we call on all those involved to remain level-headed, but it is also clear that Germany condemns Syria. We stand beside Turkey.
EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton called for restraint from all sides, but urged Damascus to respect the sovereignty of its neighbors.
I once again urge the Syrian authorities to put an immediate end to the violence and fully respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all neighbouring countries.
NATO ambassadors who met in an emergency meeting issued a statement demanding an immediate end to aggressive acts and accusing Syria of flagrant violations of international law. Hala Dababne for the News at 10.
In the Syrian capital Damascus, rebels said they killed 21 elite Republican guards in an ambush on an army minibus in the Qudsiyya suburb northwest of Damascus. The video showed a room crowded with dead bodies covered in white blankets, allegedly victims of the government forces' assault. A militant group also claimed responsibility for coordinated suicide bombings in the northern Syrian city of Aleppo that killed 48 people yesterday. Another video also claimed gun battles raged with rebels, exchanging fire with regime forces. Shelling in the rural Damascus area of Jisrin also left a building ablaze. Children at the Zatari refugee camp in northern Jordan are finally returning to class. A new school was officially opened today under the supervision of UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. Syrian teachers from the camp as well as Jordanian teachers from the Ministry of Education joined forces to start the lessons. Farah Ajlouni has the story.
Excitement filled the air at the Zatari refugee camp where the first school officially reopened. The camp is now home to more than 30,000 displaced Syrian. The school, operating under the supervision of UNICEF, was established to bring a sense of normalcy to children who had been living in uncertainty for months as a result of the conflict back home.
We're extremely excited about the opening of the school, which started 3 days ago. This is already the 4th day. And we're extremely grateful to all that supported the establishment of the school. These children have already been through so much. It is so important that we get a routine back into their life, that we get hope for these children so that they go back to school, and that this will be the future for these children.
There are 28 classes in the school set up in 14 tents. 120 teachers from the Jordanian Ministry of Education worked hand in hand with Syrian refugees to get the school going. There are around 2,300 students attending the school, but the number is expected to grow to 4,000. While some students expressed the joy at the prospect of getting back to class, others felt fortunate to be away from the conflict in their country.
I'm very fond of studying, and I wouldn't like to be a year behind. God willing, I want to earn the 9th grade diploma and go back with it to my country.
But many children in Syria have little to be cheerful about. Many schools have been turned into safe houses for people fleeing the violence. Several families displaced from Aleppo found shelter in an abandoned school in Barisha near the Turkish border. Desks and chairs were piled up on top next to the windows in an apparent attempt to protect people from shattering glasses during a strike.
I am very sad that my children are out of school, but there's nothing I can do about it. Strikes are continuous and the whole country is up in flames. There are no safe schools left in the country for me to put my children in.
In rebel-held parts of Syria, fighters have taken over many schools buildings to use as bases. They have pushed the tables to the side to make space for guns and ammunitions or sleeping quarters, and some classrooms are used for prisoners. In return, Syrian forces have dropped bombs over the converted schools and many lay in ruins. UNICEF says the Ministry of Education reported that nearly 10% of the 22,000 schools across Syria have been damaged or destroyed. Farah Ajlouni for the news at 10.
A car bomb went off near the passing convoy of a private security firm in the Iraqi capital, killing 4 civilians and wounding 15 others. Police said a parked car exploded as an SUV convoy belonging to a security firm drove through Baghdad's upmarket western neighborhood of Mansour. Sources said the blast damaged one of the convoy's vehicles as well as civilian cars and shattered the windows of nearby shops. According to latest government figures, the death toll from militant attacks across Iraq doubled in September to 365, the highest toll in more than 2 years. The morning after the first presidential debate between Republican nominee Mitt Romney and President Barack Obama, many voters said Romney performed well, even though they didn't support the former Massachusetts government. Republicans were quick to claim bragging rights after Romney's aggressive performance in the debate, while Democrats struggled to explain President Obama's often flat showing. Lay Shanqiti takes a look at the debate's mood.
President Obama's backers scrambling to keep his edge in the presidential race. They are reacting after rival Mitt Romney's aggressive debate performance put his campaign on a more positive footing following weeks of setbacks. Romney gave a strong showing and stayed on the offensive throughout the two men's face-off in the campaign for the November 6th election. But with less than 5 weeks before Election Day, the Republican still faces a tough fight to overtake the Democrat. Obama landed some punches on Romney's tax plan, but appeared restrained and missed out or chose not to pursue several opportunities to attack. Romney's confident, rigorous debating revived his flagging campaign and could help him cut into Obama's slim but steady lead in opinion polls.
Now I'm concerned that the path that we're on has just been unsuccessful. The president has a view very similar to the view he had when he ran 4 years ago, that a bigger government, spending more, taxing more, regulating more, if you will, trickle-down government would work. That's not the right answer for America. I'll restore the vitality that gets America working again.
The approach that Governor Romney is talking about is the same sales pitch that was made in 2001 and 2003. And we ended up with the slowest job growth in 50 years. We ended up moving from surplus to deficits, and it all culminated in the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Bill Clinton tried the approach that I'm talking about. We created 23 million new jobs. We went from deficit to surplus, and businesses did very well. So in some ways, we've got some data on which approach is more likely to create jobs and opportunity for Americans. And I believe that the economy works best when middle-class families are getting tax breaks so that they've got some money in their pockets. And those of us who have done extraordinarily well because of this magnificent country that we live in, that we can afford to do a little bit more to make sure we're not blowing up the deficit.
Obama campaign surrogates flooded the television talk shows, acknowledging Romney had scored what they called style points. but they accused Romney of repeated factual errors, such as insisting Obama would cut $716 billion from Medicare and of changing positions on important issues.
I felt that Mitt Romney did very well. I thought he came across as more specific in his answers. I felt that President Obama lacked in his ability to connect.
Romney did a nice job articulating his points. I think he took the time to kind of have what he was going to say kind of mapped out in his mind.
And I thought Romney won.
Why?
I thought he was more articulate. I thought he was more to the point. I thought that he threw Obama off his messaging.
Going into the debate, Obama held a lead of 5 to 6% points over Romney in most national polls and is ahead at least in narrow margins in almost all the battleground states where the election will be decided. Voting was also begun in some form or another in 35 states, and 6% of likely voters have already cast ballots. Another 28% intend to do so before November the 6th. Obama next squares off with Romney on October the 16th in Hampstead, New York, in what will be a town meeting format during which voters will directly question the candidates. The third and last presidential debate is set for October the 22nd in Florida. The only vice presidential debate between Vice President Joe Biden and Romney's running mate, U.S. Representative Paul Ryan, will be held next Thursday in Danville, Kentucky. Late Shankiti for the news at 10.
We start with Formula One. World champion Michael Schumacher announced his retirement from the race for the second time at the age of 43 after failing to rekindle his old Ferrari magic in a disappointing comeback with Mercedes. The seven-time world champion will be replaced by McLaren's Lewis Hamilton for the start of the 2013 season. Schumacher's first retirement came at the end of 2006 after he had won 5 titles in a row with Ferrari. Over to tennis, defending champion Andy Murray overpowered Slovakia's Lukas Lako 6-1, 6-2 to reach the quarterfinals of the Japan Open with all the flair of a Grand Slam winner. The Olympic gold medalist completed the match in just 56 minutes. In the same championship, Serbian third seed Janko Tipsarevic advanced to the quarterfinals with a 6-4, 6-2 win over Swiss Marco Ciudinelli. The Serb had too much class for the Swiss, mixing up power and precision to ease away in straight sets. Finally, a look at the weather. Cool tonight in hilly areas and mild in the rest of the country. Tomorrow it will be fair with some clouds at various altitudes. Unstable weather conditions will prevail in the afternoon with a chance for local showers, especially in eastern and southern Jordan. The Gulf of Aqaba can expect a pleasant night and warm day tomorrow with light winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. Royal decree orders dissolution of the lower house and holding parliamentary elections. His Majesty the King returns home after addressing the UN General Assembly and an Arab South American summit. And the Prime Minister holds talks with Palestinian leaders during a visit to the West Bank. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nansa Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.